Hello, welcome back. It's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony here for the August update for the astrology of the month. I've got my list of some of the major themes this month. We'll go through them piece by piece. Hope you're all doing well. Can't believe it's already August. If you don't catch me on my daily Facebook posts or my weekly Instagram lives, please do so. It's a Sovereign Harmony Astrology in all cases. But thanks again for returning back to the YouTube channel. And so what I want to start off with here is I'm going to highlight three things to get going. So I've been talking about over the last many months, the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all entering new signs. Uranus into Gemini, Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius, okay? So they're all there at about 1 to 2 degrees or so, early in the signs. And what's happening is they're all tightening up as far as their aspects go. Okay, so Saturn is tightening up its sextile to Uranus. So is Neptune. So Saturn and Neptune are conjunct in Aries, and so they're both tightening up a sextile to Uranus and Gemini. In the meantime, that Uranus and Gemini is also tightening up to a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so the triangle essentially, and you can see it here more clearly, there's Uranus, there's Pluto, there's that trine, that blue line there, and we've got the sextile to both of them from right in between with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. Okay, so that think of Saturn, it's not an outer planet, but it's anchoring in the aspects between all three outer planets in that triangle formation. So, and anchoring it in at 0 degrees Aries, okay? So this will be exact again in February of 2026, but we have it here now, okay? And so as we move to the fall months, Uranus is going to retrograde back into Taurus. Both Saturn and Neptune will retrograde back into Pisces. Pluto will not retrograde back into Capricorn. That'll stay in Aquarius. But that time of pulling back kind of goes back to the idea of going back to release some final steps before 2026 when these planets move back into the signs where they are now. So we're getting our preview here in 2025 of this, essentially this whole new world. This is societal evolution here happening right in front of us. It's kind of what we signed up for, essentially. That's what, Saturn in Aries is really our self-responsibility, okay? Neptune in Aries is kind of like, what we spiritually contracted for in this life. Putting those together, now it's, okay, we're responsible for our contract, right? So this is why we're here, okay? All these major revolutions that we're about to witness in society with Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini, and that trine, we literally signed up for it, okay? So what are we doing as individuals? That's what Aries has to do with, okay? We're all at an individual level coming into terms with our contract, with our sole purpose of being here for this greater evolution, okay? So this is not a small situation. This is a big deal. Again, this is why we're here in the 2020s right now, okay? When we get into the 2030s, we're going to look back at, like, say, the 20 teens and not be able to recognize it, okay? We're really in a rapid transformation here. And so all these outer planets, anytime they're aspected now, like we just had the new moon in Leo that was up here, and it actually formed a sextile to Uranus, a trine to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and it opposed Pluto. Now, it was just last week. Today is July 29th. I think that was almost a week ago. I think it was last Thursday or something like that. 24th, I believe it was. Yeah, about 5 days ago. So that energy has been stimulated, essentially. That new moon was really the initiation of the societal evolution of our role within it as well. Okay, so big energies here. But again, when we move into September, that's where we're going to start seeing these planets moving back. So September, October, the time frame is when these planets will move back into their previous signs. So next on the list, we have Chiron retrograde, which technically happens, okay, in July. That's actually tomorrow, July 30th, as I'm filming this. But that's going to be pretty fresh energy as we enter August. So Chiron turns retrograde. There it is right there in late Aries. So Chiron's been in Aries since 2018. It's made quite the journey. This whole time, we've really been challenged to face our wounds associated with capability in life, sovereign capacity in life, okay? So this has really brought up a lot of wounds about our dependency, okay? This idea that, like, we can't do it all on our own, okay? And this sort of sense of weakness, perhaps, associated with that. But with Chiron going retrograde, this is actually going to be its last retrograde before it's going to enter Taurus next year. So when it does turn direct several months from now, and it starts moving forward again, it will enter Taurus on this next trip. So this is its final retrograde, entirely within the sign of Aries. So we're finishing up this whole phase of facing those wounds, okay? So we're coming to a place of healing, in other words. And one of the final aspects that Chiron made prior to its turning retrograde is a sextile to Venus in Gemini. Venus in Gemini, says, what are the possibilities? It says, like, what other ways can I be independent, right? You don't have to follow a book on that, right? So there is a sense of healing our individuality, healing our sovereignty, our autonomy, okay, that has been happening here by embracing new methods, new ways to express it, essentially, okay? And the ruler of Aries is Mars, and this is where Mars is here as Chiron turns retrograde. It's in Virgo. What's interesting is that Mars is the ruler of Aries, and while it's not a traditional astrological association, because Chiron is fairly new in the lexicon of astrology, I think it was in the 70s that Chiron came to be, recognized and used in astrology, that is often associated with the sign of Virgo, okay? So consider it kind of a co-ruler of Virgo. Mercury is the traditional ruler of Virgo, but we can think of Chiron, the wounded healer, as a co-ruler of this sign of service and humility, etc. That goes along with Virgo. So it's interesting that Mars, ruler of Aries, that's where Chiron is, and Mars is in Virgo, which is, again, something that we can think of Chiron co-ruling. So they're in each other's signs in a way, okay? And so that's interesting as well. And Mars in Virgo is right on that south node in Virgo. So we're in this set of eclipses right now over this next year or so where we are releasing a lot of old worries, old habits, old methods, essentially. That's the Virgo. Okay, we're releasing that. And so this kind of speaks to that, the idea that we've reached a point of healing as Chiron's turning retrograde here. We've done all we can do at this phase of woundedness and healing. And at the same time that Mars is right on that south node in Virgo. So essentially we're saying goodbye to an old way or method of going about in the world. So whether that's in our job or just, how we go about our day-to-day lives, we're essentially at the end of a phase with that. And so we've done all we can do to heal that for now. And then we'll get back to some more later, but it's like we reached the peak, the pinnacle. And now it's time to face it and then release it at this point, okay? Next on our list, I'm going to group these two together. We've got the full moon in Aquarius. That's going to happen, every Leo season. We're going to get a full moon in Aquarius. And we currently have Mercury retrograde. Went retrograde on July 17th. Talked about that last month. And it will be turning direct 48 hours, essentially. This is a weekend here coming up, August 9th. So it's actually late Friday night, early Saturday morning for the full moon. And it's going to be late Sunday night, early Monday morning, 48 hours later, that Mercury turns direct in Leo. Okay. So this is a very interesting chart. I like this chart. A lot of things highlighted here, but there's the full moon in Aquarius with the sun opposite it in Leo. There's that Mercury that will be technically retrograde for a couple more days when this happens. Okay. And notice what else we have going on is those outer planets that we talked about, Pluto in Aquarius, Saturn, Neptune conjunction Aries, and Uranus in Gemini. They are all being aspected by Mars in early Libra. Look at that triangle. Okay. So it is literally, opposing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction while forming a grand trine to the Uranus-Pluto trine, which again is coming into a tighter aspect over these coming weeks for our preview for 2026 and beyond. Okay. So a lot going on here. In addition, I didn't highlight it, but I want to talk about it. Just a few days, basically on the same day that Mercury turns direct on the 11th of August, Venus will catch up to Jupiter. Because again, this is a picture of the early morning hours of the 9th of August for the full moon. This will turn direct 48 hours later. And when that happens, there will be a conjunction. Venus will catch up to Jupiter in those couple of days. So we will have this Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Cancer as well. So early, what comes about that weekend, the weekend of, say, Friday the 8th, right on through Monday the 11th, okay? This is a culmination time. Okay, so what has been building? We think if we think of the last week's new moon in Leo as this activation point for our personal fit in this evolving society. There's something culminating here, some answers, some solutions. Okay, that can really come forth here as we have the full moon, which is already about culmination as it is. Mercury turning direct, and then we have this very fortunate aspect between two benefic planets in astrology, Venus and Jupiter, happening all within a couple of days of each other. So this is very potent energy, and the fact that Mars is highlighting those outer planets, again, harking back to this idea of this most recent Leo new moon that highlighted our place, our personal place in this greater evolution. This again is opening up that idea of the evolving society. Mars in Libra, Libra is a reputation of being indecisive. Okay, so Mars in Libra can be about weighing different options for how we're going to move forward. Okay, but it can also bring us someone into our lives that forces us to consider other options. Okay, so the Libra is a sign of relationships. Okay, so there is a sense that we could be merging our actions, our intentions with another. It could be some new job opportunity. There could be some new individual in a group of ours that stimulates a conversation. There could be an actual romantic relationship that comes out that is part of our future. Essentially, that's what it's highlighting, these outer planets and where we're going with ourselves in the future. And this could be forcing us into this weighing our options. Like, wow, this came out of nowhere, right? This is this culmination. What do I do with this? What's also interesting is both the co-rulers of Aquarius, okay, that's Saturn, traditional ruler, and the modern ruler, Uranus, are both, heavily aspected by that Mars in Libra, okay? And so it really can be a turning point time mid-month or so in August, where even sitting down right here on July 29th, we just don't see it coming. Okay, when we get to mid-August, this could be very positive with Venus and Jupiter conjunct in Cancer. This could be like our heart's desire essentially presenting itself to us when we weren't even looking for it. Okay, and with Mercury turning direct at that point, what we've been doing with Mercury retrograde here, we're in the midst of it right now, is we've really been contemplating our self-expression. How do we hold ourselves back? How do we let ourselves express? There's probably situations occurring that are challenging us, preventing us from expressing, for example, or giving us an opportunity to express. And there can be some fear associated with that. Okay. In fact, I believe it is a couple days from now, because today's Tuesday, Thursday. Yes, Thursday the 31st will actually be the inferior conjunction of Mercury and the Sun. So again, this is a picture of August 9th, but on July 31st, Mercury and the Sun will be at 9 degrees Leo. Okay. So if you're seeing this just prior to August, and that's it's going to be today, basically, on July 31st, that's the halfway point of the Mercury retrograde cycle. So we have already contemplated over the last couple of weeks, the ways in which we have been allowed to or not allowed ourselves to express purely as we are, as an individual. And now we're going to come to this point here this week where we're turning the page on it. We've dove in deep enough into it that now we're about ready to start, moving forward with our sense of, okay, here's how I can express, here's the use for my expression, etc. And then that will be, again, turning direct right with this full moon. So there is this sense of the word solution just keeps coming to mind. There's solutions. There's people that come in with solutions. There's options. There's ways to expand on our heart's desire in a way that makes us feel safer, essentially. So lots of big energy with this full moon. This is not a small deal. and on a collective level, I mean, there's a sense of like we could be, opening a new door on a technology or a medical solution. That's the kind of energy that we have here. So keep an eye out for what comes up here in mid-August on a collective level. And last but not least on our list, we have the new moon at 0 degrees Virgo on August 22nd. This is interesting because, again, we've had the North Node in Virgo. It's still going to make its way through for the next year or so. Okay, so we're releasing old methods, old worries, old ways of doing things, like I mentioned before. And our next round of eclipses is actually coming up. It'll be when I come here and do the September outlook. We'll talk about there's going to be a full moon. I believe that is going to be in, I think it's in, you know what? I have to look at it. I think it's in Aries. Oh, no, it's in Pisces. Sorry, it's going to be, about halfway through Pisces, about 15 degrees Pisces. And then we're going to have a new moon at 29 degrees of Virgo. That'll be on September 21st. Okay. And so what's interesting is we're going to have 2 new moons in Virgo, one at 0 degrees here in August 22nd. And then on September 21st, a month later, we will have a new moon at 29 degrees Virgo. So you've heard the term once in a blue moon. That's referring to 2 full moons in a month, in a calendar month. This won't be that. This will be 2 new moons in a calendar month, but it's a similar kind of, rare scenario where we have a lunation happening twice in the same sign, essentially. In this case, not the same month. Okay. But that new moon in Virgo is basically saying, okay, what is our new focus? What is our new methods? That kind of energy. So as we're releasing the old ways of being, the old jobs, the old tasks, essentially, what are we going to be opening ourselves up to? Okay. So this comes off the heels, again, that mid-month, full moon on August 9th. And now it's essentially like the playing field gets cleared. And now we have a way to establish a new tack, essentially, right? And what's interesting there is that Mercury will be exiting its shadow a couple days later, I think on August 25th. Yeah, that Mercury will exit its shadow. So we have the full moon on August 9th happening within a couple of days of Mercury turning direct. Then we have the new moon on August 22nd happening within a couple of days of Mercury leaving the shadow zone, leaving the zone of the zodiac where the Mercury retrograde occurred. So that resolution, those solutions that come out mid-month with that full moon, now there's a sense of really resetting things, getting ourselves again on a new focus. Okay. And this new focus, notice the square to Uranus and Gemini, this can be very different. Okay. Very different from our norm. So it speaks to this whole idea, this whole nodal axis that we're moving through, the release of the habits, the ways of being, the worries, and an opening up to the unknown. Okay. That's the general theme of this nodal transition that we're in right now. And here we are setting a new tone for the way, the methods we're going to use moving forward. And that is accompanied with this square to Uranus, which suggests that it's going to be very different. Okay. Out of our comfort zone, but not necessarily bad for us. Okay. That's the idea, is that we're opening to something very new. And this can be, can kind of like knock us out of our seats a little bit. But we'll probably know more about what that has to do with once we get through mid-month with that full moon and that Mercury turning direct and that Jupiter-Venus conjunction, et cetera. And the highlight from Mars to those outer planets, that all happens, again, right around these days here between, say August 8th and the 11th, that Friday to Monday period. It's going to be very potent, okay? So that's it. We'll leave it there for the month of August. If you have any questions, do ask me below. If you want more frequent updates, do follow me on Facebook, Sovereign Harmony Astrology. I'm also posting, there's still some time left for my summer special. Okay, summer special for personal readings. I post that information in the comments section of my Facebook posts. So you can find the details about that there, how to contact me, etc. Otherwise, we'll just leave it there, with some general themes here. Healing authenticity, that's with that Chiron turning retrograde in that sextile to Venus, while it's kind of, intersigned with Mars and Virgo, essentially. So there's a sense of we've reached the pinnacle of healing and we're ready to release some things and move forward. This merging action, that's that Mars and Libra opposing those outer planets. Who are we merging with? What are we merging with now? What are these options that come to us that are leading us into our future? And then that new focus that comes in with the new moon in at 0 degrees Virgo specifically. So this idea of like really resetting our methods moving forward. So with that, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching and sharing. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you again soon.